Get ready to uncover groundbreaking ideas, discover the hidden challenges, and explore the untapped potential of marketing in the digital age. This is Fair Play with Arun Kumar, the podcast that takes you on a journey into the impact of data and technology in marketing. Here's Arun.
Hi everyone, this is Arun and welcome to another episode of Fair Play. My guest today is Jorge Ruiz, the Global Head of Marketing Science at TikTok, where he's been driving innovation since 2019. With a rich background that includes leadership roles at Facebook, now Meta, and Ogilvy, Jorge brings over 2 decades of experience in advertising effectiveness and media analytics to the table. He's here to share his insights on the evolving landscape of digital marketing measurement. Measurement, as you know, which is a favorite bugbear of everyone. Jorge, welcome to Fair Play.
Arun, thank you for having me. Hi, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Jorge, I've got a bucket load of questions around marketing science, measurement, attribution, data, etc. But where I wanted to really start from is, given your really interesting career where you started from Ogilvy, went to Facebook or Meta, and then have been here at TikTok. I guess one of the first places I wanted to start with is you've been through this journey. How has the discipline of marketing science changed? Has it evolved, or do you think we're still trying to answer the questions we were trying to answer 20 years ago? Or do you think we've now reached a net new inflection point?
I feel very grateful and fortunate that right now I'm in a position to where I'm my goal, I want to build the best team in the marketing science industry right now at this place. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity and the value to give to clients. But I think the way, if I would kind of introspectively look, to me, in some ways, the question really lives on the caliber of the team that you build and you put together. So it's, with marketing science, it's still about the people on the team. But really and the reason why I say that is because my career really is in 2 parts. I spent 10 years at an agency, and Ogilvy to me was the best teaching hospital for learning advertising effectiveness. To me, all the foundations on ads research and measurement really began there. And then I've also spent well over 10 years as well on the tech side. And I think the difference is, on the tech side for me, it's been about mastering those research and measurement practices to lead large-scale systems to really drive value to the industry. So it's just, in some ways, the root questions haven't changed. The way we try to understand ad effectiveness, what's changed is the speed, the process, the operations, the reproducibility, the caliber of depth that's expected. But it still has to be this journey that you have to make sure that you have the right teams in place and empower them along the way. But I'm glad that advertising is fun, bringing that discipline and really helping team make decisions. That's the name of the game.
So if you were to rate the effectiveness of marketing science, let's say 10 years ago, in terms of answering the questions that clients have fundamentally had on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is really poor, 5 is great. And if you were to do that same exercise today, where would you rank marketing science?
The questions haven't changed. I think what's probably changed in terms of the rank, what I would reframe the question as is, how have analytical teams successfully been empowered and being put into positions to influence actual decision making? And to me, I'll give you this example: anybody can hire really good data scientists. Anybody can hire. You can hire and can train. I trust any one of us as leaders to do that. It's how do you actually train and empower those teams to be able to actually influence business decision making? So as a result of this study, now that it's landed, now that you did this, how can you influence your cross-functional partners, your clients, your agency peers to take action and foresight as a result of that work? And to me, that is a key difference that separates a, quote, analytical team from a marketing science team.
Do you think the effectiveness has improved over the years? Do you feel like analytical teams are able to drive more decision-making now?
I think the influence and the career growth of analytical teams, if you look at the last 10 years, even going back 20 years, it's just, these things come in waves. But I do think that the people that have had the most practice and discipline in analytical work in our industry are now in positions to where they understand the value of kind of bringing this kind of muscle. And so I think in some ways in the last 10 years, there's more analytical foresight in the business. We know accountability is super critical all across every division with its marketing. It is crucial, but it's still something that every organization has to build that muscle for how they want to empower the analytical teams and make them strong marketing science teams.
So let me bring in a perspective that I've heard from clients, and this is more as an ex-agency person and now a consultant, which is there seems to be this belief that the volume of data has definitely increased, but there doesn't seem to be a belief with marketing clients that they have necessarily got all the value out of that data, which they thought initially they would get. There's a feeling that there's a fair amount of middlemen who make a lot of money out of it, but I still don't know which part of my budget is working for me and how much. And it's reached a point of people have started to accept that they're going to get answers to certain questions, and then they're not going to get answers to certain other questions. What's your own take on that? Like, why is it that there is this feeling still that all that data has not led us to answering, some fundamental questions? Like I was recently with a client, and they still bemoan the fact that despite being performance oriented, they could not get an exact handle on what was really driving outcomes.
It's a very thoughtful and nuanced question. I can't speak for every facets of the ecosystem, but I think my personal view is that in some ways, in the last 10 years, there has been a lot of radical changes within the marketing space, and digital. Digital is now a prime aspect of how you like. It's not like the days of like, what about digital in the mix? Is that the mix is digital in many, many aspects. What I think is happening is that 15 years ago, there was a lot of strong disciplines on the effort for comms planning, but also the effort of making sure that the campaigns were extremely well planned because the cost of measurement was so high and it took so long. So there was a lot more foresight on how to plan really well early on and then executing and then knowing there's got to be a gap. The trade-off that's happened with digital is that everybody has seen the benefit of having more data faster. And that has exponentially raised the expectations of teams being hands-on keyboard day-to-day. And there's a certain paradox that the speed, availability of data, you just can't cheat your way out of the measurement journey. You can't cheat your way into having a causal randomized experiment overnight. You have to have things take time. So what I've always said to my team in Just is, you can have a great campaign with the greatest measurement in the world, but if it's a poorly planned campaign, it will probably be a poorly resulted campaign. So to me, I think it's the marketers are leading today in the marketplace that I have the fortune to advise with and see their success are the ones that really have strong planning discipline. They take their time, they don't cheat the measurement journey, but they're very focused on their key objectives, and they're making sure they have alignment across their partners, their platforms, their agencies, and they really understand those key questions. And they accept when it's going to be simple, fast measurement just for guidance, like a reporting, versus really specific measurement that needs to be translated not just to the CMO, but also to the CFO.
So there are two things there which I find very interesting, especially in the context of TikTok, because you're an ecosystem where it's ironic, but there's almost this blend of brand and performance, which seems to be two silos that the industry seems to operate on. There's a brand team, there's a performance team. And I often struggle with this. Like I can't quite figure out where brand stops and performance begins. And the budgets get allocated between different teams. The teams are not often sitting under the same leader. And TikTok can do both. It can help you sell, but it can also help promote your brand. So how do you help marketers especially when they are fragmented themselves? You've got budgets sitting in different pods. And then you're an ecosystem where you've got creators who can help do both. You can drive the brand, but then you can also, at the end of the day, drive performance, the way performance is understood inside a sales organization. How do you address that question?
To me, part of this is that I think, who was it? William Gibson had this really wonderful sci-fi quote many years ago, which is like, the future's already here, but it's just not evenly distributed. I think in some ways you could argue that that the leading clients and the ones that are doing the best, they already are for years have done full funnel strategies. It's just how that gets executed. What ends up happening is, in some ways, you could argue that you could say, well, any given large entity, like in my case, I'm very confident, I'm very proud that we know that TikTok works. We have a lot of proof, we have a lot of evidence, we have a lot of research. We're going to work, one at a time with clients and make sure that value is assured for them. But it would be remiss to say that our best practices alone, that every marketer is going to adopt them exactly the same at the same time. You have to go and meet marketers where they are, and they have to go through that journey. And sometimes that journey is predicated based on the organizational design, and sometimes based on, you have to be very clear and support on meeting marketers where they are. So some clients will still want to have brand campaigns, reach campaigns, performance campaigns. So that's why there's a very specific focus in making sure that first, add value today based on the client's objectives. And as you're looking to grow and understand and confirm the value of each of those campaigns and systems, there's a question of, and I think sometimes this is where the confusion happens, which is, are you understanding impact is a first order problem. Once you've proven impact, your job then is to prove growth. And that's when you're thinking about evolving your measurement systems and the way you're looking at them to say, it's not just about incrementality every single time. That's important. But then how do I continue to have growth? And that's when teams will start thinking, wait a minute, how do I best combine a brand and a performance campaign? And that's where I see like some of my favorite examples of client success are actually international, because the clients sometimes with the least amount of resources, they're forced to think creatively and break those silos quickly and just be like, how do I start from scratch? What's the best way to do it? What's the journey I should take?
Yeah, that's actually, as somebody who's traveled in different markets, I totally agree. Like I find that sometimes in the US, we are cursed with the big budgets, because the big budgets actually give us the opportunity to split things. And then we end up in a position where we then have to bring them all back. It's like you split it and then you bring them all back. Whereas there are other countries where the budgets are so small, you don't have the privilege. Are there any categories or sectors that are doing better than others, you think, or it just has to do with clients as opposed to sectors?
Oh man, that's such a great question. I'd look at it in two ways. One is based on, is the given vertical a signal rich, like do they have their own first party data or do they not have first party data? So sometimes that predicates the speed and the expectations of measurement. And then of course there's the size of the campaigns, because the one challenge with measurement is that sometimes statistical power requires like very high thresholds. And so you just can't do super hardcore measurement causal experiments on very, very small campaigns. Nor should you. You have to go through that journey on having the right measurement for the right need. But I do see that clients will have different measurement strategies based on whether or not they have the ability to, like, if it's like signal rich where they have all the access at their disposal, or things where they need to be able to kind of rely on an ecosystem. So it's my team's job, and I do believe in the industry, it's like you have to meet marketers where they are. As they master that journey, then you kind of have to bring that rigor and sustain accountability.
So let's go from where marketers are. One of the things that I loved is that you folks at TikTok, I think in 2021, you released a study about whether it was the number of users who converted to specific campaigns or whether they bought something that was not recorded by the last click attribution approach. I really love that piece of research, because yours is one ecosystem where people generally like blindly go in and say, oh yeah, TikTok, I get a great piece of content, I'm going to get conversion. And yet you came out there and said, hey, there's this whole bunch of people who get influenced who don't immediately convert, but actually they do, and their journey is very, very different. What the heck do we do with this last click attribution approach? Like, I speak to clients and they say, yeah, it's bad. And then they continue to use it. So it's like, guys, they never seem to get off it, and they always keep measuring you against it, which means everyone keeps doing the same. So what have you guys done differently to change clients or move them away from that drug?
Well, Arun, sounds like I should be taking you more to my client meetings, because yes, that is indeed the crux of it. But you know what's funny? I've been having the same question ever since my early days. When I was at Ogilvy, I was taken from the CRM analytical department and sent to the media department, because the media department needed help to bring rigor on the analytics. And I was back in the early days with ad servers. I was trying to battle this question as well on web analytics system versus like media ad serving systems to understand the true value of digital. So this question is not new. I think there's a couple of pieces to it. So I love that you read our earlier research, and yes, it's true. A lot of the foundational hypotheses on advertising effectiveness for digital, we've corroborated and confirmed a lot of the same behavior kind of happens. So it's natural. So things that you've seen and expected on mobile effectiveness, it's like you have to go beyond the click, because that's not fair value for the advertiser to understand the effectiveness of those platforms. And in this case, we have something to where we saw from a recent study that 79% of the purchases driven by TikTok, they are not captured out by last click systems. So clients are missing out on performance activity that's already happening. It's just not observed correctly in the systems. But I think, and so I don't want to dwell too much on the specific, we can talk about it later on which specific solution and system. What I want to talk about, I think, what at the heart of one of the challenges, I think, behind your question, and where actually we spend quite a bit of time helping clients through it, which is my hunch, and what I've seen time and time again is when there's clients that struggle with this question, it's not that they themselves are struggling with it. Most clients will get it. They know they need to use more. It's their other accounting teams that have transformed measurement into accounting. And that's why it becomes very difficult to take a change in a really cool measurement solution when the client's own goals are dictated by a finance team that says, look, I have a CPA year-over-year number to meet, and that came from this web analytics system. So we have to make sure that we empower the clients to first have that behavior change conversation with their own finance or respective teams. Yep. Because if you don't crack that first, it doesn't matter what advanced measurement system you can bring in. And that's where it's so crucial to have that consulting mindset to really help give clients the opportunity to then go on that measurement journey.
So do you get brought into those meetings? Like, are we seeing movement there where you're actually in with client finance teams trying to explain how measurement systems need to change?
Well, it's my aspiration and my goal for the teams to strive to that situation. When we're there, fantastic. When we earn the right, fantastic. But to me, it's something to where if clients have questions and challenges on last click, where can we help? Is it a matter that you need to have more measurement together with us? Is it a matter that you have others in the organization you need to believe in? I'm very fortunate that we have that level of trust and inquiry from clients, because their success ultimately is our success. And that to me this is why I care very much about having this kind of marketing science mentality to consult with clients.
And the other thing that I've sort of noticed is that the moment you start going to finance teams, you start almost talking at an enterprise level as opposed to just a marketing team or one section. And in the few occasions where I have managed to get into the finance team, suddenly the conversation becomes much bigger. It's no longer, what have you done with the marketing budget? It is, I have so much of money and I've got to hit this objective as a brand or as a company, and show me how you're helping me hit that objective. One of the things that I've got as feedback from some marketers and also from some non-marketers, CEOs, is, hey, we don't see marketing connected into the enterprise system. We see it still as a cost. We don't know how to account for it. And so in many cases, it is seen as a cost. And then it's almost like you're guilty until you're proven innocent. So you're always trying to prove that you're not a cost. Have you seen any improvements in that? Or do you think that there were always companies that were good at dealing with this, there were always companies that were bad at it, and the ratio remains the same? Or do you see give me some positive news, man? Like, I just wish that we were moving away from this we're a silo kind of mentality.
I think in a landscape where macroeconomically there's a lot more focus on accountability, I think that's in some ways helped to foster this conversation. And I do think that the marketers that I see leading in the world, this conversation goes a lot faster and a lot smoother. And I think, for me, it's something to where I see improvements. My job and my expectation from my team is we have to earn the right to step up one campaign at a time and build value along the way. And when we're fortunate in those conversations, we do see that, between the marketing, the finance, and even the procurement teams, the conversations are very rational, very well thought out, questions can be hard, but they're very fair and they're a lot more thoughtful on, yes, we understand that marketing has value. The question is how and where. And that's where the hard decisions are, because it's like, what do we prioritize first?
Got it. And over time, going back to the time series thing again, is there a specific difference in approach that TikTok takes, which is different from some of the other ecosystem providers that you think makes you differentiated?
There's a really great study from Cantor that was published earlier. I'm actually looking forward to seeing the results in the next couple of months. It's called the Media Reaction Study. And they've constantly ranked us number one on ad innovation, on attention, and number one for ad equity among video platforms. I only reference that because it's a great study that balances the perceptions of marketers and consumers. But for me, it anchors and kind of builds on a point that what I've seen and what fascinates me about TikTok is that I think the question is, yes, TikTok works, but why does it work? And it's because the quality of the platform, the quality of the creative, that not just for creators, but for brands, in marketing, we've always strived to have ways to kind of improve effectiveness of the media, but also have effectiveness of creative. And our opportunity, and the thing that marketers get excited about is, and most marketers, they'll tell me, yes, we kind of have a hunch that TikTok works. We need you to prove it. You need to be accountable for it. And then we need to figure out how to grow, but we have to get the creative right. And I've seen time and time again, and this is when 4 years ago we said, don't make ads, make TikToks. We needed brands that come in and participate and learn that new muscle. Today, I see brands mastering that. I see brands taking TikTok and putting it in the heart of their media mix, and actually taking other channels that are using more TikTok-style content. It's not to say everything is TikTok, but it's just the fact that it's a place where today's consumers are really discovering, brands are participating, the quality of creative and content. It's been such a critical differentiator for brand effectiveness, and it's something to where I think it's consumers love us, love the platform for its authenticity, the quality of the content, and then marketers are starting to master it. And now we're starting to see how we can help marketers along the way for how, now that we're having more commerce opportunities, how brands are really mastering their full funnel on TikTok. But it will always be one campaign at a time to make sure that we're being fair and accountable and driving value for their business.
You are the platform known for AI. So I'm going to bring AI in here, but from a different perspective, which is TikTok has been ahead of everyone else in the game in the adoption of AI and the use of AI. How is it impacting the way you approach measurement? And how are you weaving that into measurement? Or do you think that you're using the same strategies as everyone else, but just because of the quality of the platform, the fact that there's so many sticky eyeballs, et cetera, it makes your job easier?
I love this question. Because it really gets to the heart of build for today, invest in the future. And a lot of things that my team is working on is really making sure that we continue to answer two core questions where, in the industry, anyone in my field will always be asked: do the ads work? And why do they work? So when it comes to client value today, it's making sure we have a strong portfolio and reproducibility across our measurement systems. The research has really awesome insights that we can kind of help to give marketers more ways to understand what's happening in the platform. But when it comes to things like AI, I do like the fact that my product peers have been being really thoughtful in having features that are very fun, authentic. They're very relevant to the platform. So what we announced recently in Cannes, and if your audience has seen or may have heard publicly, we launched TikTok Symphony, which is a feature of Gen AI solutions, very much to help and supplement the creative workflow for creators. So whether it's avatars, AI dubbing, or having prompt queries to help write copy in the ads. These are very much features around having a high level of utility and still very, very authentic to helping the creators. So it's not a zero-sum game. It is complementary and additive, and it's also very much focused on helping brands scale. And I'll give you a really good example that's fun, because today it's about making sure that it's just right now there's many things that could get very complicated, but how do you make it simple, useful, have high level of utility? and make it just easy. And so one of my favorite global examples right now is actually from Vietnam Airlines, from Vietjet. And they wanted their creators to go global. They just didn't speak all those languages. So same creators using some of these features, they would just automatically have in the system using these tools. They can have their creators automatically like have the same ad, and they translate it into multiple languages, and they scale those campaigns globally. So it's to me, in many ways, to have a lot of success, it has to be authentic. It has to have complementary value, and it has to have things that can very quickly be really seen as value added and practical. And that's where the focus is today, because to me, I do think that's the right call. Longer term, obviously, there's questions around things that we could do in advancements for measurement and research, but those are about like thinking about as an industry, just keeping an eye on where the breakthroughs are. Because for me right now, it's making sure that value for clients is the number one priority.
So it's interesting you talk about how AI, for you, AI is about where we can take the industry. So here's a thought and a question. One of the challenges for many, including TikTok, is, hey, it's a self-attribution system. You're marking your own report card, so to speak. But at the same time, there is an understanding and a belief that there's a fair amount of science behind marking that report card. So here's a question. Would you ever consider, or are you considering, becoming a measurement platform that works horizontally for clients across multiple media and sources? And the reason why I'm asking that question is because I'm trying to get an analogy of what's happening with EV charging and Tesla. Where Teslas are most common, it's the one that's recognized as having the most chargers. So suddenly the industry says, hey, we're going to adopt you as the industry standard, instead of coming together and coming up with a net new standard. I would argue that in many marketers' minds, when it comes to the use of AI, you're probably far ahead. So should there not be a case that the methods that you use by which you demonstrate that brand and performance campaigns work on TikTok could also work on other platforms, as long as they were enterprise platforms that were used by clients?
It would be wonderful to get to that mountain in Everest. Of course, who wouldn't? But I think number one is we have to follow and respect client trust and client asks and client guidance. So I think for me, it's been very important first. The first order of business, if you're in my shoes, is build a very strong portfolio of first and third party solutions. You have to make sure that the third party solutions are really well accepted and trusted in the marketplace. They have high rigor, high reproducibility, and high confidence. And then you need to have first party solutions, because the world is a very big place. You have to serve clients that are not just big and have the ability to afford good measurement, but you need to have clients that don't have the same resources. You need to operate at a global scale for small businesses and large enterprises. So you need to have a very rich portfolio of solutions. And today we are working across the board on all the solutions. I think clients will still continue to expect a certain demarcation on how clients expect each platform to be able to contribute and show value. And this is why third-party solutions are critically important. Now, if clients came to us and said, we want more of this kind of solutions and becoming more, like, it would be great to hear. I can tell you today, like, for example, we collaborate and thanks to client guidance, we are participants with the WFA and the ANA and ISBA. So we are part of that cross-media global initiative for how clients are helping to think the industry on the latest on privacy enhancing technology. So we sit on those boards where we contribute. And so clients are telling us they would like features like that to be very privacy safe, very advanced, and as an industry concept, to build more for audience measurement where those privacy standards can be held together. And so if clients are asking for that as a thing today, I think it's important to kind of look at how we can contribute there. And if there's more such things, then we're happy to explore.
Got it. So You actually are sitting in a very interesting point because on the one hand, you've got your creators and your users. And then on the other hand, you've got the advertisers who are asking you for measurement questions. How do you balance between the needs of measurement versus the needs of the user experience? So do you have like a line which you will not cross and say, hey, this really disrupts the user experience and I'm not going to cross it?
Well, the quality and the authenticity of the platform is so critical. It's just it's one of our superpowers. So it is critical to make sure that we work very closely together with our friends on the core app side to make sure that everything that we build is thoughtful around it. Consumers come first, and brands are strong and participating, and we see a really healthy balance. But we have to make sure that it's something that's authentic. And kind of going back to the example that we made, that I gave you on TikTok Symphony, which is those Gen AI features, you can see and you can feel they're very, the utility for creators is so foundational, but they're tailored around quality first. And so for me, like that's a part where I'm very proud of the fact that while every brief internally we get is do all of the above, we always put the quality of the platform, and this is why when Cantor looks at us and then they show that we continue to be number one in ad innovation among marketer perceptions, but consumers see us as tops when it comes to ad equity, it's part of the reason of why.
Yeah, and closely linked to that is the notion of privacy, right? So let's for a second keep the laws out of it, because in my mind, the laws are either trying to play catch up or the people making the laws don't quite understand what they're trying to regulate. So let's keep the laws out of it. But when you look at what your users want, and clearly some of the creators are there because they do want to monetize, and then you look at advertisers, what's your position on privacy? Like, how do you hold the line? And I've been asked this question many times, which is, how do you decide whether something is going to be good for a user if you share that data versus not? Is one of my first asks. And my second ask is, one of my beliefs is that we have overhyped granular information and we've left the models and the aggregate data behind just because we've had data available. Like in some cases, we've almost not asked the question of, why do I need this again? Like, what am I using this for? And what's the value for the user? And so there's a lot of value that the models provide that we don't take advantage of just because, hey, I know a person's location. Like, why can't I just use it? So how do you get that balance between the two?
Well, the balance for me is pretty simple. We have our aim, and the business began. I've been in the business for 4.5 years ago, and since day one, we've always our intent and our principle is to be one of the most trusted platforms. So we need to be trusted across the board. So we're very thoughtful and intentful on how we build. And so I think. What are the points to your question I think is fascinating is when it comes to the measurement world, media mix models, it's back to the future. They never went away. They're back. It's this notion of when it comes to measurement, the questions and the methods in some ways, they haven't quite changed. It's a speed of operations and expectations that people are kind of trying to rebuild in today's fragmented landscape. But when it comes to things around utility, there's a ton of value. If you can have an architected system for econometric modeling, it can be helpful. You can actually build some really fairly lightweight causal inference approaches. Even if you have access to APIs, you can get it done. It's more. You have some trade-offs, but there's a lot of cleverness that I see across measurement partners today, where they don't necessarily need to have like every single nth dimension, but this classical statistics with some machine learning methods that are more innovative, but they're very resilient in how they're approaching things, and that's why today it is important for like the clients that are doing really well. It's not just about creative, but ensuring what their own signal strategy is. So it's not just to me about like privacy as a binary yes or no kind of question. It's you have to be thoughtful. You have to be very much like a trust. You have to build for trust in mind. But when it comes to like campaign measurement, you have to think about what are the right signals and the right resilience to which signals you want to use. For example, so like I'll give you a very practical example. I had a client that was struggling in Brazil, where they they were running conversion lift studies with us, and they just couldn't figure out why. Results. They're like, what's going on? We got the right awesome creative, things are cool. Why do I get nothing? And we're like, well, what did you do? How did you set up your pixel? So. Okay, what do you want to do with it? And they were like, well, why don't you use an events API and do the right parameters, passing them out correctly, and let's see how the conversion lift study works. All of a sudden, an ocean of change where same creative, but using the right signals, had a fighting chance to have a well-powered statistical lift on those results. So for me, it's something you have to be very thoughtful. Clients are very much part of the journey in this, but our goal, and I hope that with our client friends, they do see that everything that we build, it's for adding trust and value for their business.
Let me shift a little bit to the models themselves. And I just had a quick one, which was there are some theories that marketers hold true, which is all around there and about past model, or they'll say reach is king, recency is king. Then there are the newer models, like what the MMA has come up with in terms of the movable middle framework, where not everybody is the same. You only need to focus on the people who are going to buy because they're not committed, so on and so forth. Do you have any preferences?
Well, the preference is dictated by the goal the client gives me.
So do you think that these models are very specific to the needs of a client, or do you think one or two of them may be outdated across the board?
I think all of us are trying, as practitioners, we're all trying to crack the same aspect. It's an easy conversation that I see in LinkedIn all the time. I think what gets tricky and what gets hard is clients are finding success where they're able to grow. They can grow their business by being able to have not just like, they need to understand incrementality. They need to understand how to grow their business. But to me, the thing that I find that is at the heart of a lot of those constructs is the quality of the creative. And then there's a lot of components that continue to be true. So effective frequency, effective recency, the Irwin Efron model, that never went away. But I think where I do see the differences, and I think that's important, is number one is the constructs will vary by vertical. So for example, the way you approach it for CPG, you could argue it could also be valid for things like, in-app gaming, but the way that those in-app gaming companies operate and behave, and they have to move, they have to have a very different journey to learn to get there. So it could be counterintuitive to say, if you give a construct and say, this is how you should look at it, it does a disservice to the actual journey that each client or each marketer has to do on their own. I think it's important to have institutionalization of what are all the different concepts, but you have to make sure that each organization and each team has the confidence that they've mastered the basics before they can go into the next level. But I do find you could say yes, all of them work, and I think I'm very happy that when there's a lot of variety, because it helps the industry continue to get stronger through those different ideas. But at the end of the day, with measurement and effectiveness, you have to have reproducibility.
And I think there's an interesting point that you brought about, which is the whole part about the creative.
Yes.
And it's something which I've noticed that the creative almost sort of tends to operate in this separate plane from all the media measurement approaches, where I've even seen models where creative is not being taken into account at all, or someone is doing creative optimization at a certain place but has not linked it back to marketing variables. So I suspect that must be a clear feather in a cap for you, because you folks actually see the clear impact of creativity on both brand and performance.
It is at the heart of, I'll give you an example. When we work with clients, our first job is to build that trust. Of course, you have all the basic components, but once we actually have the measurement effective conversations, the next order question is, what about the creative? How can you help me improve the effectiveness of the creative? I don't quite see the pushback or the questions when there's recipe advice around like effective frequency or recency or like the decomps that you would want them to look at. Clients just jump right into, all right, great, I got it, cool. What about the creative effectiveness? How can I do better there?
And so, since I'm not on TikTok, shockingly, well, I have at least age.
My friend, my goodness.
I have age as an excuse. So I'm well past your Gen X, Gen Z, millennial.
I'm going to make sure you get an account right after this.
Okay. I will get an account. But the question I had was, do you have small TikToks that explain the measurement solutions that TikTok has? And I feel like you need it because you folks bring a certain element of the creative side of measurement. I mean, when I say creative, I mean creative literally, not that you're being creative with measurement. That I think that it would behoove marketers to understand better, because I think that should actually influence the way they look at creative, period, not just on TikTok, but on everything else. So that's my idea for you. If you haven't already got small TikToks on measurement, you should have them. At least people like me will then have an excuse to join TikTok and see them.
Absolutely, yes. That is for second half. We're like my team. We're gonna work with marketing on that.
So last question. What do you believe will be the next big breakthrough in marketing science, whenever it comes?
I asked my team this question lately because it's middle of the year. We're thinking there's a lot of cool things that the clients are thinking about, and we've been thinking about this question. And it's the list is long, but I think two things stood out when I was having this discussion, and I think obviously everybody in my team, some variation of things around Gen AI. But I think what came out is two trends. Obviously, when it comes to Gen AI, there's going to be a lot of innovation in the industry, and we're keeping an eye on it. When it comes to innovation for research, I think synthetic data is a trend right now. We've been keeping an eye on it. It was something where, even within academic circles, almost a year ago, this was something that was discussed. We've seen it now more. And when I was at Cannes, it was among a lot of the conversations that I heard. But this is, and even actually work in one of the latest papers on the future of measurement. There's a section that talks about some of these concepts. So I think the reason why there's this interest and this appeal is it's this question of, can it speed up market research? Can the insights generation and content generation, can it help there? I do think that it's super early days. So I do 100% believe that human and quality inputs are going to be super foundational. So it's not a replacement. But I think this question of, can anything around synthetic data help for market research? And the question is going to be, how well can I use it? Is it going to be reproducible? And how will there be any, if at all, process to ensure that there's quality, and how do I kind of make some early insights from these features? But I see as if the industry cracks that to me is a breakthrough. On the measurement side, this is the part that's fascinating, because if you think about it, the best measurement systems today, they're all centered around teasing out causal relationship between things. Ergo, that's how you want to improve effectiveness. But so think of the features around things like conversion lift, offline sales lift. The challenge with those systems is that they're high bar systems: cost, size, statistical thresholds. Just can't cheat your way out of causal inference. The question is, with a more powerful technology within these Gen AI systems, I think all of us would love to see more of that. Can any advancements there help those lifts, the causal inference methods, get smarter? Because today, in all those systems, they're taking a classical statistical approach and trying to merge it with advanced machine learning approaches, kind of, make it go faster. But would be nice in those of these advancements, if you could actually make the systems help you predict ahead what the treatment group is going to be like. And it's a very, very hard thing that it's incredibly difficult to crack, hence why the classical statistical systems still win out in the bar for what's good. But this notion of good measurement is costly and expensive. How can I have ways to actually start understanding my treatment and control groups in a better, more efficient way? I think that's a very high bar, and I don't know who's quite cracked it yet, but to me, that would be a genuine measurement breakthrough.
And would that be linked also to the creation of synthetic data? Because and here's where I'm coming from, which is, when you were talking about it, it just struck me, the whole question of identity, which is increasingly under pressure because of many of the signals going away. You could actually create much more accurate models based on synthetic data, which may, for example, you and I could be in the same group, and maybe it may not be accurate at the level of understanding what you do versus what I do, but it could model us out as a group far more accurately than us mining granular information, which anyway isn't going to be around for a long time. So that combination of the ability of synthetic data and therefore being able to much better understand how the model came in might just unlock better ways of measurement.
It's early days. I think that number one is ensuring client value happens today, ensuring trust and reproducibility. But these are two early trends that I see happening across academic circles and early practitioners. But I'd be excited to see as an industry where any of this kind of breakthroughs can occur. And if and when they do occur, I think teams should be, these are the things to where I think as an industry in advancements, it's worth keeping an eye on. But, we have campaigns to run, we have value to build,
But I have a suspicion that somewhere deep in your basement, you have a skunk works going on, which is working on just those two areas.
Everybody's thinking about these things. So it's just a matter of being thoughtful, being candid, being transparent, and really building value for the industry.
Thank you very much, George. This has been a lot of fun having a conversation with you about marketing science, which I think is one of those disciplines that gets expected to answer a lot of questions, but not a lot of attention is paid behind it because it's geeky, nerdy, and I've seen clients actually roll their eyes in certain meetings because they don't understand some of it. But you clearly make it accessible. Thank you so much for being on Fair Play.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And that will do it for another episode of Fair Play. If you like the show, please take a moment to subscribe so you'll get notified when I release new episodes. Also, if you have a moment, I'd love it if you left us a review so that other folks like yourself can learn about the show. And don't forget, here's my favorite plug. My new book, The Data Deluge, Making Marketing Work for Brands and People, is available now wherever books are sold. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.
This has been Fair Play with Arun Kumar. If you want to uncover the keys to using data wisely and fairly in an ever-changing world, go to arunkumar.com for more insights and resources. Fair Play is a production of Forbes Books.